Welcome back, everyone. Our last guest is a musician, author, and inaugural fellow of Letras Boricuas, Brio Award winner, and established Nuyorican poet. He's appeared on the fourth season of Def Poetry Jam and has been published in numerous journals, anthologies. He is the founder, songwriter of the band The Mona Passage, which has performed at Lincoln Center, Brooklyn Museum, El Museo del Barrio, Bowery Ballroom, Puerto Rican Traveling Theater, and that's just to name a few. Pero his latest book release, Excelsior, is a 20-year collection of poems that explore independence, freedom, survival, fatherhood, a devotion to music, and litany of other themes. Everyone, please welcome, long overdue, Nuyorican poet, musician, and author, Bonafide Rojas. Woo! 20 years,
I know.
ni te aparece. ¿Cómo va a ser?
That's the running joke. That's the running joke.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you.
Why Excelsior?
So I was working on a whole different collection earlier last year, and I had looked at my first book was called Pelo Bueno, and there was a poem in there called 25 Years In, and I giggled because I was like, wait, so that means this poem is already 20 years old. So 2024 represents the 20th anniversary of Pelo Bueno, the 10th anniversary of my fourth book, Renovatio, my third book, Renovatio. And I was gonna make a redesign and a republishing of my second book, but I just felt like it wasn't time. So when I read 25 Years In, I put the other manuscript on pause and put this all together. And Excelsior has just been a word that's, it's New York State motto. I'm from the Bronx, and it means upward forever. And I thought it was time to do that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And thank you for breaking it down for us, right? Because this is like a compilation of collections as well.
Yeah.
Right? And so because this is the first physical copy I'm experiencing, right? Because I was doing the e-file version of it, right?
Yeah.
Are they put in a certain order to take you on a trip?
So the chapters are broken in terms of publication releases. So the first chapter is Pelo Bueno, the second chapter is When the City Sleeps, the third chapter is Renovatio, and the fourth is Excelsior. And then the ending is a notes section, which is a very loose MLA format of footnotes that I did in my last book that I thought was it gave the book a whole different feel because it gives you historical breakdowns, but also very personal anecdotes on very particular things.
And so this is also like an insight into your, but it is insight into your personality and your uniqueness, right? I mean, aside from being a serious poet, you've been in the game for a minute now, and
Yeah.
I cannot believe I have not had you on before. It's ridiculous. Every time I think about it, I'm like, this is so overdue.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that you're available to this. I'm happy that we're here to amplify this messaging because your style and your way of being, it's like kind of the identity. That seems to be the theme today, in yourself being into like rock and having a rock band and, being from the Bronx and having the hip hop fusion, but being Nuyorican and not forgetting every aspect of that being part of your identity and not being apologetic for it either.
No.
Right, especially growing up in a day and age where we were like really down with the hip hop. Oh, I forgot to mention the graffiti art too, because you're a graffiti artist as well, and you've got pieces in here written about it that I could relate to. Not that I was out there doing it at those hours. I'm just saying, for clarity purposes. But it's a culture, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's a New York culture.
Very much so.
And so, but then there's the rock aspect of it. That's the what? ¿Cómo?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in New York in the 90s, and the common theme with rock and roll kids or people who are, whatever you want to identify them that grew up in New York in the 90s, you know, it wasn't necessarily accepted. You know, we definitely got into fights with people, but luckily that's gone. You know, I think post millennial 2000s, they just started to blend, and I thought it was great. But you know, you don't ever let go of those chips on your shoulders for getting into a fight because you wore like a Nirvana T-shirt.
Yeah, but you discovered it at a young age. I
was
guess is really
13. I
what
was
I'm
13,
right.
yeah.
And so I discovered it when I went and relocated to California because that's what was predominantly being
Yeah.
played on the radio.
Well, I discovered it. There's a whole poem in there called "Rock and Roll Puerto Rican." I talk about how an older friend in my neighborhood loved Depeche Mode, and then my sister was a few years older. Shout out to my sister who went to Saliman. She was into like house music, and so I got into like a lot of different genres at like 10, 11, 12 years old. But I was on a trip in Florida, and there was these white kids who showed me rock music. But when I got to New York, when I came back, Z100, right? All these stations still played rock music, so it was really accessible. And then of course MTV.
Right.
Of course MTV.
Right, that transformed it
Yeah.
all. Right, but and then of course the flavor became very eclectic. At least I'm an eclectic listener as well,
Yeah.
so I get it. But again, just in the way I read one of the poems, I was like, you know, that must have been something. That must have been something.
Yeah, yeah, it is. You know,
I'm saying back then, not
No,
now.
no, no,
And
no,
you already explained it all. We don't need to revisit it. But I'm just, you know, I just love the fact that this is authentic writing,
Thank you.
right? Yeah, in a place of like I can kind of travel during time
Definitely.
with you,
Yeah.
right? And relate to it, even if it's not something I was directly involved with, but as a New York culture, as an urban culture, as obviously a fellow Nuyorican, but
Yeah.
more than that, even if you're not Nuyorican, if you're into just identifying with the development of, let's say, how graffiti art wasn't an art at that time. It was actually,
Vandalism.
Yeah. Vandalism.
Yeah.
When it came to music, hip hop was just being born around that time. I know we're at 50 years, but I remember I was a little kid when the first hip hop song ever came out, and how that was a thing, and that was kind of like our means of communicating and identifying, right? And so having experienced that during a similar time frame, dating myself, to visit it through your cleverness. You're a very clever writer, Bonafide. You really are. You really are. What is that one saying? I saw it on an image that they presented that you wrote that you always show on a big screen when you're doing speaking.
Is it learn to live, live
Yes.
to write, write to love, love to learn?
One more time and do it slower because I got to close out with that.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Learn to live, live to write, write to love, love to learn.
There it is. Learn to live, live to write, write to love, and love to learn. What a full circle story, right? Oh, that's not a story. What would we consider that?
It's a mantra.
It's a mantra. Yes,
Yes,
that's exactly what
mantra.
it is. Gracias por eso. That's why he's the poet. Well, I identify as a poet too, but we're actually going to get a little more of you. And guess what? When we come back, he's going to perform for us. So I'm sure you don't want to go anywhere. You can take a break, but come back because when we return, Bonafide Rojas is going to perform from his book after the break.